Welcome to the podcast where together, every Monday, we explore hospitality in its very broadest sense. From culture and cooking, cocktails and coffee, nutrition and farming, politics and animal welfare, organic and sustainability, family and business, entrepreneurship, and much, much more. Come and learn with me, Mark Cribb, about where our food and our drink comes from, and the businesses and, more importantly, the human beings that thrive on where we decide to spend our time and our money. Sign up to our weekly newsletter at humansofhospitality.co.uk and hit subscribe on your podcast player of choice. Nothing too exciting in the hospitality news this week. Eat Out to Help Out continues to get generally some very strong feedback from most of the sector. Out of town locations generally still seem to be stronger than city centres, no surprises there. And Rent Armageddon still looms on the horizon with more and more CVAs and closures announced on almost a daily basis. And we're officially in recession as a country, and hospitality is a significant cause of that. But with all of that backdrop, the sun has been shining and lots of people are trading well and making the most of a very short season, nervous about what autumn may bring. But nervous or not, you have to be impressed with today's guest's energy levels. Adam Handling works hard, has achieved a lot, and is not short of an opinion or two that he is quite happy to share. Now, Adam joined me just 48 hours after reopening The Frog, his flagship restaurant in Covent Garden. He'd been through a particularly traumatic closure period where he'd lost 4 of his venues and learnt a great deal about the business side of running restaurants. Adam speaks openly and honestly about the financial, physical and mental aspects of what he's been through, but he's kept a huge number of his team. Despite 57% payroll costs on reopening, he's keen to find another venue before the year is out to accommodate his talented crew and try and ensure they keep their jobs. He's working hard, he's thinking about Michelin stars, and he's one of the most driven people I've chatted to. Adam's enthusiasm for all things sustainable and what he learned through his now closed restaurants, The Ugly Butterfly and Bean and Wheat, are very, very infectious. Personally, I wish Adam the very best for the future, and like many of us, he may well end up with a stronger business as a result of all he has learned in the past few months. Now remember, if you enjoy these podcasts, can you do me 2 quick favours, please? One is head over to the website humansofhospitality.co.uk and hit the Patreon button where you can buy me a thank you beer. And secondly, can you please pause this episode, pick up the device you're listening on, scroll down to the review section on the app and hit 5 stars and subscribe. Even better, leave a few words of encouragement. It makes me smile, it helps the pesky algorithms get this podcast in the ears of more people, and that helps me get even better guests for you and I to enjoy. Win-win all round for just a few seconds work. Thanks and enjoy the chat. And one final thing, the audio delay. It really annoyed me listening back, but hopefully you won't even notice it. But there is a little delay that makes it sound like I'm a bit slow in responding to Adam sometimes. Sorry, blame the internet, but rest assured I'm not actually suffering from some sort of mental delay. Cheers. Adam Handling, chef and restaurateur, welcome to the podcast, and thank you so much for sparing the time. And I say that to most people because I'm always grateful that people spare the time, but with you, I don't think it could be any more real because you are an exceptional, busy human being. So thank you. Can you just explain where in the world are you at the moment, please, Adam?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm in my Chelsea restaurant, Adam Handling Chelsea, in the Belmont Hotel. So I was doing some stuff here this morning. So it's nice and comfortable.
Excellent. Is that one open yet? Oh.
Yeah, opened on Saturday, but the restaurant's the one where it's going to be open the least at the moment. So for this month, it's only Thursday, Friday, Saturday it's open. But the bar's open 7 days a week. So I'm sitting out on the terrace, enjoying the sun.
Oh, wow. Very nice. Many people about?
No, it's actually surprisingly strange. You know, Chelsea is usually full of people walking everywhere because of all the shops, but it's completely dead. It's a ghost town out here. And yet you go to Covent Garden and it's literally like walking in a circus. There's so many people.
Wow, really? That's interesting. Because somebody described it to me. I was chatting to Chris Gumbel, who's the CEO of Brewhouse and Kitchen, a couple of days ago, and he was saying that it was a little bit like a polo mint London at the moment, in the fact the centre was completely empty and dead, but then the outskirts, the suburbs, certainly from their venues-wise, were really busy. But that's good to hear that at least Covent Garden's picking up.
Yeah, Covent Garden is absolutely packed. We're actually going to be building an outside area there, I think, the end of this week. So like lots of big flower sofas and things like that, because we've got a license now to put a restaurant on the street. So not only do we have the inside area of 32 seats, we've actually been given a license for 36 seats outside, which is fantastic. Just got to make sure we can make the most of it before winter comes in.
Yeah, 100%. Does that mean you'll have more covers than you did originally?
Yeah, would be, yeah, for sure. But outside, we're going to do, we're doing Toad on the Road, which will be like bar snacks and bar food and like zero waste sort of stuff. So, for instance, fish finger sandwiches, but using turbot trim, lobster rolls using the lobster knuckles from the lobster dish. Playful things like that we can actually sell very affordably because they're basically a wasted item in the kitchen.
Amazing. All right. Well, we'll definitely touch on that more. And I just love your continuous creativity. So judging by how busy you are and various awards and all the things you've done at such a young age, you don't look like a person who was particularly cut out to be locked down and told not to do anything for 4 months. So we're going to chat a little bit about what you did do, but then much more about reopening. But can I just ask? So Saturday morning, 48 hours ago, just a little bit more, having had the restaurant shut for 4 months, that was your reopening morning of the Frog, your sort of flagship Covent Garden venue. How did you feel on Saturday morning to be reopening again? Was it quite emotional, and how did the day go?
It was emotional because the day before we weren't even finished the building works. So, it was still like, oh crap, that piece of art has to go up, that needs done, that paint needs touched up. And then when I went in this morning, Saturday morning, the builders had been working all through the night, and so had George, our group GM. He was really bashing on. Stunning. It was so beautiful. And I'm not going to lie, I got emotional. I put all of my savings I now have are now in this restaurant. So if it doesn't work, I'm kind of screwed. But it's absolutely beautiful, and it was so amazing to have guests in the restaurant, talk about it. And it's the first time since opening our entire restaurant group where I've changed Covent Garden's menu 100%. So right there, given 3 months off, it's given us time to develop and really progress, push, and make the menu far better than it ever has been. So it was really emotional.
Yeah. What was the idea of the building work then? Because you'd already, when did you open it? It was about a year ago, was it? Or?
Oh, it's 3 years in September. So it's quite
Oh,
a
that
while.
long, blimey. Okay, so it was just literally a refresh job then, was it, or was the
Yeah.
building work as a result of COVID changes?
Well, ironically, it was like a blessing in disguise. About a week before lockdown, one of the apartments above the restaurant, their boiler overflowed, and it kind of like ruined their floor. Went down into our restaurant during service, but luckily right at the beginning, so we managed to shift everyone to Chelsea, and kind of like made a mess of the ceiling and the floor. So out of doing it, the insurance company, they're the ones who did the refurb. So it was such a blessing in disguise that I got a refurb that was free. Obviously, a little touching up with new tables and some new service areas that I put in all of my rest, and Eve Bar as well. That was us. But yeah, all because of a happy accident.
That's a Yeah, that's amazing. How long would you have had to close for? Presumably, it wouldn't have taken 4 months to do that.
It took about 5 weeks to do that refurb.
Wow, quite a lot of damage then done.
Yeah, lots. But actually, I didn't actually think it was that much. I didn't really notice it, but I noticed the roof needed to be a touched up paint in the walls as well. But the floor, I was just like, oh, that's just wear and tear. The insurance was like, nope, we'll redo that one for you. I was like, I'm not going to say no to that at all.
Gosh, that's the first good news insurance story I've had on this podcast for quite some time, Adam. Everybody else has been swearing and cursing about them, so you've just set them in a good light. They should be very grateful. You should get free premiums for a couple of years as well.
I don't know about that. They
So
also cancelled all my insurances when we tried to claim for the COVID closure, little buggers.
yeah, you and everybody else. I think I heard you saying you even had pandemic cover, but because it wasn't listed, no interest, basically.
Correct, and I think that's the same with most insurance people. They cost a lot of money. 5, 6, 7,000 per property a year, and then you get in some trouble. You need help, and they're like, yeah, insurance cancelled. X, Y, and Z happened. And I was like, bloody hell, yeah, vultures.
Yeah, it is incredible. Well, you've undone the good bit that you've done with the floor story. There, but we're back. Yeah, back in the room. So yeah, reopening day. Then did it? Because it's very unusual, I think, isn't it, that we close all of our restaurants and then reopen them all at once, and the staff presumably a little bit rusty. But how did it go? Did you nail it on Saturday?
We nailed it. We nailed it. It was we did a test service whilst the builders' work was going off on the Friday, where I ate and so did some of the other senior directors. They all ate, and the staff did a test run on us rather than guests, and that was difficult. I was worried, but the following day I was on the pass. Everyone was on the ball. It was phenomenal, and just to see as many faces. First days are always really good because it's all the big fans of the restaurant that come. It's not ones that are, the business ones or whatever. They really want to interact and they want to see the journey progress from when they've came in countless times before to then coming back. Like there must have been probably 10 tables that were like, you were the last person we ate at before lockdown, so we wanted to make you the first to come back. And it's just like, it's amazing. It's so beautiful, and it's really heartwarming that we have such a loyal following in the group.
Yeah, I think it's lovely, isn't it? When all that hard time in closure and the financial sort of catastrophic impact, and you wonder what you're going to do. But that public support, customer support, it is emotional, and I think it does motivate you to put the effort in to come out the other side. I think, doesn't it?
100%, 100%. It makes you feel great, and the team.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So for those listening who don't know the Frog, can you just describe it? How many covers is it? What's your sort of style of food?
Yeah, so Frog by a H in Covent Garden. It's our flagship restaurant. It's only 32 seats inside, and it's very much a menu based on Britain. So when we say like, how do you describe the food? It's British food inspired by London, and I mean the London part is London's a stunning, multicultural city, and we take our inspiration from everybody that we come across, everywhere that we've traveled, but basically using fundamentally British ingredients. So if we're making oyster sauce for one specific type of dish, we're using British oysters, we'll make our own oyster sauce. If we're using kimchi, we're not buying kimchi from Korea, we're making our own using the cauliflower leaves, for instance, that sort of stuff. But we take the inspiration, the stunning flavors, the style of foods from around the world, and we make it British. So I think it's quite good to say that. There is no real rule book about British food the way it's going because it's such a young cuisine. Other than that, it was French and bloody roast beef, which is delish. But British food, I think, for the last 7 to 10 years is really making its own. So there's no real rule book of that. Does that make sense?
It does. Makes absolute sense. Yeah, yeah. And you've had some amazing feedback. I've not been, but next time I'm up in London, I will definitely be coming in. Can I just ask? So, impact of COVID and closing your restaurant. So you've started to reopen just at the weekend. Are there any of your venues pre sort of COVID venues that you won't be reopening? What's the sort of outcome of what's happened?
Yeah, sadly, there's 4 of them. So we're not opening Ugly Butterfly, Frog Hoxton, and Bean and Wheat and Iron Stag. So I lost 4 in the blaze, sadly.
Yeah, that is sad. Is that just based on not being able to get enough financial support, or just looking at the outlook for London and thinking that demand's not going to be there? What's the main reason for those?
I got no financial support. The government was, I don't know how to word it any better, but absolutely shit towards hospitality. When Bojo condemned hospitality to death by saying avoid restaurants and bars but keep them open, you're still continually needing to pay things. You still have to pay the staff because furlough didn't come in until just after that. You still have to pay electricity, you still have to pay the rent, you still have to pay the food. You've got food stock already, you've got wine stock, all that stuff. And he sentenced it to death. Because my company is one company, Adam Hannon Limited, and that's all the restaurants, that bounce back 50 grand loan thing. What a load of crap. It's not 100% guaranteed. I didn't get it at all. And where people would have individual companies per restaurant so that it's easier if one goes down, you just cut it off and bankrupt it and the rest stay afloat. I had it under one. So I was only eligible for 50K for all of our 9 outlets, which I didn't get because we were too big, too large, and financially not in a strong position. So what the government was saying publicly about how they're supporting hospitality and all that, I don't really know how to word it any better, but it being a load of bollocks. And it put me in a lot of problems. I lost my house out of it. I lost a lot of things out of it. And yeah, you adapt, you overcome, you conquer. It makes you stronger and also makes you want to vote in the next election, even though I never get into politics.
Yeah, it does seem frustrating, doesn't it? I think the rateable values, the 51k cutoff, which must just be laughable in London. I mean, even down here in Bournemouth, where I'm based, I didn't qualify because my rateable values are too high. But I can't imagine anybody in hospitality in London's got a rateable value under 51k to qualify for any of the grants. And the C bills, we did eventually manage to qualify, fortunately. But I know, the vast majority didn't, and it's probably only because we've been in business a long time and had a good relationship with the bank. But I take it even that the bank just weren't willing to. I guess hospitality is just considered to be too high a risk industry at the moment to invest in, I suppose.
Oh, for sure, it is. It is, and losing so many restaurants as well, your share price kind of drops massively.
Yeah. Well, well done, because you always seem to come across super positive and pumped, and you'd achieved so much in a young age. So I take it at no point did you consider just chucking in the towel and walking away? You've always decided, have you, that you were going to knuckle down and try and get through it?
I've never spent so long in my career in tears. It's been an emotional wreck for me. But you know, you can just sit and moan and grumble and blame the world for all the problems which it's chucking at you, or you adapt. You modify your business plan, you modify your idea of what to do, your forecasts, and then you adapt to it. You create a new avenue, a new stream of revenue, because if you don't, you'll lose everything. And you don't just do it for yourself, you do it for the team that's dedicated years and years of work to you. So as an owner of the group, I'm the one that has to, wake up in the morning and just say, stop being such a little bitch. We can create something new. Let's create Haim, where we can create revenue that way to keep the restaurant group afloat. Let's work even harder for Covent Garden. Let's up Chelsea's stuff. We lost some, but we consolidate everything that we're doing. So yeah, I'm always one that inside, oh, don't get me wrong, when I get upset sometimes, but I'll never show it to the staff, because as soon as I do it, they're like, oh crap, maybe we are in trouble. Maybe we do have to look for a new job. But with all the closures of the restaurants, we've kept near enough mostly all of the staff, near enough, not all of them, but mostly all, and we've put them all into the restaurants that are still open. Doing that is because they're in a worse position than I am, for goodness sake. I fire them right now. Where are they going to work? No one's hiring. No one's hiring at all. I'm inundated with people wanting to work within the group because there's nothing there. So I've created my business plan where it's pretty much just breaking even for the next few months, until we hopefully opening another restaurant towards the end of the year, so that the staff that I have can finally go back to there, and it'll push the wage bill down. I'm running at the moment at 57% wage cost. That's mental in this current climate, absolutely mental. But I refuse to make everyone who's worked for me for so many years unemployed, just to earn an extra little bit of money for the group. We'll be fine. We'll survive as long as we keep focused and everybody realizes that one wrong turn and we are in the shit. We'll be okay.
Yeah, that's good. I imagine you'll get an immense amount of loyalty. And I know some of your team, your is he exec chef or group chef? He's been with you for 12 years, I think. I mean, so you already had that loyalty, but I would imagine even more so. People really buy in if you're authentic and genuine and open with them, and then try really bloody hard to keep them employed. So I imagine your team are very supportive of you at the moment.
Yeah, well, I do have a very loyal team. Stephen, yeah, you're right. Group chef, been with me 12 years. The head chef of West London, he's been with me 10 years. Sous chef of West London's been with me 7. Head chef of East London's been with me 8. Sous chef of Central London's been with me 6. I've got a lot of the main people, because I like to promote within as well. It's all about trying to really pull out as much talent and as much ambition as the chefs that have worked for me, as commies, CDPs, whatever, and really push them to make them grow. Because at the end of the day, nobody really wants to stand still. There are some out there that are happy with CDP and they want to stay that way for the rest of their life because they just like to cook, which is lovely. But a lot of the chefs, you've got ambition, especially when you're in my group. You constantly see me running around like a headless chicken, trying to make something and make a business grow and be it more exciting and new dishes. When you're surrounded by people constantly trying to run forward and make something new, it's inspiring. Whether or not it's not just me, it's all of them too. So I like to promote within on all. So in terms of senior chef wise, we very rarely ever hire for them.
Yeah, that's really good, particularly in the last few years, I think, because trying to find quality in the last few years in chefs has been really challenging, and I guess ironically that's going to be flipped now because, as you say, for the first time in a long time, there's a lot of people looking for work. I just want to touch you mentioned Haim just now. So one of the things I know you'd always said is that a lot of restaurants have got into Deliveroo or sort of diversified recently, and you'd always said that rightly so. I think your food didn't travel. What is Haim, and what was the trigger for you launching that?
So Haim, Scottish for home, the trigger was really I had no support from the government, no nothing like that. And to be fair, I didn't actually know that lockdown would be so long. When it happened, I was thinking, oh, maybe a few weeks, maybe a month. But the more it came on, the more I worried because I couldn't now not afford anything. I couldn't even afford to top up the salaries for the staff. I could nothing at all. So I created with Nicola, my ops director, and Stephen, the concept of Haim to say, you know what, hell with it. Let's just make dishes that we can do all the prep for, and then they can just redo them at home. Just reheating, warming up, and finishing, and we'll do videos to it. So I did them on my mobile. It wasn't anything costly at all. It cost me nothing. We did it all on there where they can scan a QR code and do all that. I got so much shit for doing that, so much from chefs, especially outside of London, saying, why are you doing videos? Why are you doing that? They don't want that. They want fish and chips. They want all that. And giving me a lot of crap on Twitter. And I'm just ignoring them because I'm like, listen, I'm not being funny. I just made £100,000 on Haim in 1 month. When we're doing that because we're working really, really hard to really push it. And we had a menu that was like a restaurant menu. It was like the menu was massive. Everyone's doing one or two dishes, and I'm doing a full big menu, and I'm doing it because it's variety, and also I do the whole of the UK. So as soon as I did that, that was it. And then when Haim became really popular, I felt far more relaxed about being able to keep this restaurant group afloat. Far more relaxed. So then, because of that, I was now able to pay some of the suppliers that I was using for Haim, and now all of them got paid for. I was able to start paying for things like the electricity because I couldn't have the electricity turned off, or my CCTV cameras, my fire alarms will all be shut down too. And I was able just to keep the business still touching cloth every single day, but it was more beneficial than going minus minus minus. So I only did it to keep the
Yeah,
restaurant group afloat. I never said I would ever do a takeaway. But now it's here to stay because it's a great concept. The menu is going to change far more frequently because the restaurant groups are open, and it's just a real fun thing to do. If you don't live in London and can't get to any of our restaurants, you can literally order on before like Tuesday, and it'll be sent out on Thursday, delivered to you before lunch on Friday, and it has a 3-day shelf life on it, so that you can literally eat it Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, and you can have a real interpretation of our restaurant group anywhere in the UK.
yeah. And it looks amazing. So I've got to ask. So from when you had the idea, because the speed that you work literally blows my mind. Because you don't do things by half, do you? So from the sort of concept of, okay, we're in the shit, we're going to launch this, to actually launching it, because you've done, it's got lovely packaging. Like you say, you did a video for every dish. You didn't just do a couple of items. It's branded well. There's a website linked with it. It's in essence launching a new business. How long did it take to go from concept to, okay, we're ready to launch?
7 days. 7 days, and the
Yeah, you're
longest one was
ridiculous.
the packaging arrived.
That's it's impressive. I watched your little sort of Insta post on it, and I thought, holy shit, because I could see all your bags were kind of perfectly branded. And then when you said you'd done a separate video and a QR code for every dish, I was like, you must have more hours in the day than a normal human. It's
I
very
did all the
impressive. So
videos
was it a
and
case of,
one day, all of them in one. I was so
did you
tired
really?
after that. Yeah.
Oh, you just make the rest of us look shit, Adam. If I'm honest, so if you could just slow down a little bit at some point, was it a case of a really sort of big surge of interest earlier on, and then it's dropped off, or is it staying pretty consistent, that business?
The first 2 weeks we only did London, and it was busy. But like Maria, and Jamie, we delivered all the inside 10-mile London radius, and we were doing quite a lot. I would say the first week we did maybe 200 dishes in the first week. Second week maybe like 300. Then I did FedEx, and I did about 1,000 in that week, and then the following one was Father's Day, and I literally, I shit you not, there was like 2,000 dishes that week, and it's just like this is crazy. We had FedEx come and they pick all the parcels up to do it, and he needed a truck. We had so many boxes everywhere, all wrapped up nice and beautiful to be sent all over the country. And it was fantastic. It was amazing to see. It has dropped down slightly because we've capped the bookings. We've capped the orders purely because we're just opening the restaurant. We need to concentrate on that as well as Haim. So we would rather do it where they both work well. And then we'll reopen more time slots next week, and we'll change the menu the week after that as well.
Yeah. And where are you actually producing the food from? From one of the restaurants, or have you got a separate unit to do it?
In Covent Garden. So all the chefs are like, "While you're doing the refurb, please fit in another walk-in fridge because we've got no space with this Haim stuff." And I'm like, "Mate, there's no space anywhere. We just got to adapt."
Love it. Well, hats off to you, because what I love about our sector is how innovative it is, and despite the the Twitter negativity, I think that there's so much respect for so many people who have just found some way to pivot and get through this, and I think it's such an exciting thing. And I think in the main, despite government criticism, I guess, or challenges or lack of support, I do think the sector has come out positively. So much has been done to feed the vulnerable and feed the NHS, and so many people have stood up. And UK hospitality, sort of, with an ear to government, it does feel like we're getting a little bit more respect, whereas we were perceived as just somewhere that people work while they're students. Do you feel that the industry has come out of this pandemic with maybe a little bit more credibility and understanding of the challenges of restaurants?
Yeah, I've noticed that the London community of hospitality has really came together a lot closer, and they've helped a lot of, well, all of us out. We're communicating more, we're chatting more, we're helping each other more, um, and that's really amazing. Restaurants aren't direct competitors anymore. They're there to support and help. And in terms of charity, we were doing over 1,000 meals a week for charity within Covent Garden before we started Haim. Um, to help the vulnerable, help the NHS, help all of them. And what industry does that? What industry has the time to stop everything they're doing to really target people that actually need a lot more help than we do? And this lockdown has actually been able to do that and made people respect what the NHS is doing rather than bitching and moaning about that they have to wait a long time for an appointment or whatever. But now they actually see they're working hard, hard, hard as well. And to be able to give back to the people that are looking after everything, are looking after everyone, and one person at least in our family has been looked after by the NHS within this closure is phenomenal to give back to them.
Yeah, that's good. And I think hospitality is in essence a reflex that, people who genuinely work and love hospitality, we just do it. So to see so many restaurants fundamentally on their knees, financially, and would have been so easy to throw in the towel. They actually, they kept their electricity on, they kept their supply of sweet, and they brought food in, and they produced for the vulnerable people. It certainly made me very proud. I think that we stood tall and represented ourselves well.
Yeah, yeah, no, I agree. It's beautiful to see. Beautiful to see.
Yeah. So just sort of focusing on your general ethos and a little bit of background, as I've alluded to, doing a bit of research, you work incredibly hard. I think I read that you pretty much, you were visiting every restaurant every day, then working on the pass in the evening. What does your general day look like? Because there's a big difference, I think, between being a chef and being a restaurateur. So, are you also good at the finance of the business and the branding and marketing? What does an average day look like for Adam Handling?
Well, give it today. We've closed the restaurant groups now on Sunday, Mondays. Usually it was 7 days a week operations on all of them, apart from Hoxton. But today, wake up at the crack of dawn. Forget I have meetings such as our one previously. Filming, finance, going through business plans, what we were doing, marketing, editing the social media content to go out on all the platforms, and that sort of stuff. That's the day where we're closed. But then I work very closely with my operations team to really break down uh, we our forecast. What we do, we have a business plan. That's a 5-year business plan. It's obviously been re-edited from the virus, and then we do forecasting every 3 months. We reforecast every Monday to see that if it's in line with bookings, if spend per head's gone up, and we be a little bit more accurate, so that we know staffing wise, food cost wise, that we're safe. And in terms of my role now, being a restaurateur, I'm more. I target that a lot more. We have head chefs in all the restaurants that can do all the prep and making sure that the health and safety is done and the temperature checks and all that and the costings. But in terms of the overall business, that's my role to do it. So I do finance, I do marketing, I do social media, I do all of that sort of side of the business, along with my ops director Nicola, who's been with me a while. But at night time, whenever the restaurant's open, I am on the pass. I'm on one restaurant pass every single night. So mostly it's Covent Garden, but a few times a week it can be Chelsea, and it really just goes where I want to go. But I'm on the pass almost. I'm on the pass every night the restaurant's open, unless I really, really do have another meeting.
Yeah. So what is it then that drives you and motivates you to work, quite so relentlessly? Because it does sound like a pretty bonkers workload. What's your motivation?
To be fair, it's to be surrounded by my friends. I get to work to get away from, well, to be more comfortable and to get away from, the arguing at home if there is ever an argument or a screaming child or anything like that. I get to work and I love it. We're all a bunch of passionate people, but we've been with each other for a long time. So simple as like, oh, what are we doing on the next menu? Let's create. And that creating side of the business is the part I love the most because you then get more inspired where we work very closely with our suppliers or farmers, and it's just like, yeah, this is coming into season, perfect. Let's try and create this. We have two labs. We've got a food lab and we've got a drinks lab, so we're constantly developing things. Using food waste for different cocktails where we can make it into alcohol, and all that creative side of the business is the reason why I go to work every day. All my kitchens are open planned as well. So the chefs serve the food still. And when you're serving them and you see the guest faces and they're loving it and you've noticed them before, all of that is so rewarding that it makes you want to come back again and again and again to work. And it makes you love it. I always say, if you don't enjoy what you're doing, regardless of the field you're in, get out of it. Get out of it because you just become a miserable sod. If you really enjoy what you're doing with the people that you're around and you love it, you'll constantly keep wanting to be there. So I get to work to get away.
Yeah, I think you're right. You've got to love hospitality to do it because so many people listening will be going, Jesus, 7 nights a week, every night in service. Yeah, we're busier Friday, Saturday, and Sunday when everybody is off. I understand why so many people look at hospitality as a sector, as an industry, and just go, "There's no way I'm doing that." But actually, when you're in the thick of it, it is such a buzz, isn't it, and such an energy and a privilege to work in. So yeah, thank you for being such an enthusiastic human.
That's all right. That's all right. Yeah, but a lot of people when they see a chef on TV or in a magazine, they're like, yeah, I want to do that as well. It sounds great. They get in the kitchen, they're like, too many hours, man. I can't do it. I'm like, yeah, I can understand that. We're not going to reduce hours down. It is what it is. But when you then do it for a long period of time, it's a way of life. It's like being in the army. As soon as it's the same sort of thing. You go to war every service, but you're having a great time with great people that you trust around you. As soon as you get out of the army, you're a bit lost. As soon as you work 7 days a week or 5 days still, but massive hours with the same amount of people, and you leave or you're lost or lockdown. Prime example is lockdown. A lot of the chefs I felt so sorry for that, and that's why I created the charity stuff as well, so that they can come back and help with that and get out of the house. They feel broken, they feel lost, they feel sad, they feel depressed. Being in a place of work where you're surrounded by beautiful people that care about you as a person as well as pushing you to do great things, you don't all you're feeling inside of your heart becomes positive rather than on your own, bored, negative, overthinking, and sad.
Yeah. Do you think that, so that kitchen culture, that the lots of hours, because I always say, like, you can work a lot of hours in a kitchen and you can love it and you can love the vibe and you can love the sector, and you've got to look at how much you're learning when you're in that. But there seems to have been this change in the last few years of, I don't know, people being maybe expecting more or maybe less from their work, and wanting more time off and wanting restricted hours. It feels difficult to strike that balance, because in many ways you want people to have good family life and have kids and have some time off, but the other way is you do want really impassioned people who absolutely love it and understand some of the compromises you make if you want to be at a top level in the kitchen. Do you think that kitchen culture change is sort of finished, or do you think it's complicated? What do we do about those sort of conflicting objectives, I guess?
We always say we want a work-life balance, but the realistically is you're a one team. So work-life balance, I've tried to implement, 3 days work, 3 days off, 4 days working. But I'm like, guys, if any of you's called in sick or any of you's, something happens to you or a family problem, you've put the whole kitchen in the shit because we really can't. Or we'll go back to 5 days and five doubles. Well, then one person slips up, then the other one has to be called in. Then another one slips up, another one called in. Then you're like, no, fuck it. No, I'm done. Five doubles, like a normal kitchen, like we've always done. And people are fine with it. It's the new ones that are coming in, or the younger generation of chefs coming into it. And I know it sounds really bad that I'm like a little slave driver about work-life balance. But it is what it is. It's how I was trained. It's how the direction of, especially the Covent Garden restaurant, Chelsea restaurant, is a lot more relaxed and a lot more hour friendly. But with inside it, the job needs done. We're all gunning for a star. We're all gunning for perfection, and we all want it as much as each other. So therefore, the work-life balance, we're putting all of our life into achieving that. When it's achieved, then I can imagine some of the chefs will say, you know what, I've done it, I've achieved it. Now I want to relax. Can I go to the Chelsea restaurant where I know that I'm going to have an extra day off, whatever than that? And they're fine with it. If someone requests a day because their parents are down or whatever, perfect. You can have it off. No worries at all. And it won't be coming off as holiday. It'll come off just because you want the time off. All of that sort of ones. But we look after the staff a lot more in different ways, in much, much more different ways. So all of the staff get to eat in all of my restaurants. Every time a menu changes, they get to bring a partner in for free and experience it. We have staff parties, staff dinners, staff lunches. We look after the staff in a lot more different ways. But in Covent Garden, work-life balance is not one of the ways that we do.
Yeah. Did I hear something about you taking your chefs off to Thailand every Christmas or something like that as well? Was that right?
Yeah. So I took all the chefs, the senior chefs, to Thailand in January because I'm working on a new project and I needed their help with. I just took the chefs to Tuscany last week. There was 5 of us out there doing some events out there. Yeah, they go all over with me. Jamaica, the Cayman Islands, Russia, all of them places. And I take the team. It's not just the same people going, me and Stephen. It's not just them. It's Stephen stays and I take the other ones and they get to see the world. It's all paid for them. Yeah, so whenever I'm doing an event, Cuba, for instance, I took them there just because we were learning about cigars. So I was like, right, okay, who all wants to go to Cuba? And we took 4 of them to Cuba just to learn about cigars for a week. And it's great. You need to like the people you work with because when you go away with them, it's just like you're boring as shit and annoying. But you need to like who you're going away with and the people in your kitchen.
Yeah. Do they know because they don't get invited the next year? Is that how they know if they're boring as shit?
Yeah, we try and get as many people to go as possible, but yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I'm not going to let my chefs listen to this episode because they'll be demanding a trip to Cuba to learn about cigars, which I'd imagine they would absolutely love. But yeah, fair play. And I think it's a bit like sort of Olympic athlete. I think like you say, you've got a star in mind, or they've got a particular goal, and you just work your ass off. And is it 1 Olympics or 2 Olympics? And so it might be 8 years or whatever that you just work your ass off for, and then eventually, yeah, a bit of burnout, bit of rest, but you just feel good that you've achieved it. So yeah, I think you're absolutely right. You should just go for these things. One of the other things, and I saw you do a talk on this at a hotel and catering show earlier on in the year, and that you've been sort of passionate about for a long time, is sort of the sustainability and the ethics of food. But again, in your typical style, not just a little bit. You take it to an extreme with the ugly butterfly. Where did this come from? What was the catalyst for your sort of obsession, I suppose, on zero waste and being environmentally aware in food and drink?
I started off when I opened my first restaurant, Froggy One in Shoreditch, and it was because I was struggling to then afford to pay the bills, and I was like, how the hell, my food cost is costed. How are we not been able to pay the bloody bills? And it was because we use day boats and we use small producers. So if one day I get 20 mackerels and I sell 15 of them, I've got 5 left, and then the following day there's no more mackerels, so I get skate wings or whatever because they're the best on the boat. It's just like, what do we do with them 5? And then the staff are having a great little meal, sardines on toast, mackerel on toast, that sort of stuff. And it was like, man, we have to really stop doing this. I love you all, and you need to eat, but you're going to have to start eating other stuff. We didn't have a freezer. It wasn't about that. So then I created Bean and Wheat in Bishopsgate. So it was like 5 minutes from Shoreditch, and it was about coffee and bread. So and everything that food-wise was in jars. So soused mackerel, parfait using the offal of ducks, and that sort of stuff. Loads and loads of jars of things like that. The berries that weren't quite right we made into jam. The apples that we would be peeling would make into chutney. So it'd be like apple peeling chutney and sort of stuff. And we were just finding ways where we can fundamentally make money from our food waste to pay our bills to stay afloat. And then after we'd done that, we created then the third restaurant being Covent Garden, and it was mental. They didn't have any food waste very much at all in that restaurant because it was very strict. And we had a bar underneath, so the food waste would be turned into alcohol for the lab. So we would make shrubs, we would make infusions, we would make that sort of stuff, and the snacks would represent that as well. Making a croquette with the trimmings of fillet that we'll just mince down and make into a bolognese and turn it into a croquette of that sort of way. And then when I opened Frog Hoxton, it was on just off Old Street, we created another Bean and Week where we wanted to do a restaurant, but a small one. So no, sorry, 8 till 3. We would do that, and we would do actual proper dishes rather than things in jars. And it became really exciting to produce proper dishes, and it was when it's gone, it's gone. So if we did have that mackerel situation, and then they did like beautiful sourdough that we had from the following day, soaked in olive oil, pan fried, and then a tomato ragu that was made using all the tomato scraps, cooked down with loads of balsamic, and then a beautiful bit of barbecued mackerel over the top of it for the leftover mackerels. That's bloody stunning and delicious, perfect for lunch, perfect for brunch sort of style. And it went really well. Right there, it was teamed up with beer. So it was like 220, 250 beers on the menu there. It was like a library, and it was stunning. And then when I opened Adam and Chelsea in Belmont, that's when things became a little bit like, wow, there's too much waste in this joint, too much waste. Not because we were careless, not because we didn't care, but because we had to cater for a hotel with such a stunning reputation. If someone's paying all these thousands for a bedroom and wants to have a lobster at 3 in the morning, they get a lobster at 3 in the morning. We had to adapt into a way where we've never had to before. And it was all about making the best hospitality in a hotel that we can do. A challenge for us because we've never done it before, but a rewarding one at the end of the day. It was great to be partnered with them. So then I was speaking to the Cadogan Estate, the owners of the building, and they were like, "We love your Bean and Wheat concept. Would you bring one to Chelsea?" And I was like, "Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it." I don't think it will work in this neck of the woods because everyone's very wealthy and that sort of one. But yeah, I'd love to. And I teamed up with them again to create Ugly Butterfly using all the food waste of the hotel as a proper restaurant, and my God, was it magical. The people in this area, which I thought wouldn't work, loved it. It was always busy. It was super affordable, and it was curating things is the thing that's exciting about being a chef. So curating a concept where it's like you're looking at everything. We've only got see-through bags in the kitchen, only see-through, so we can see exactly what goes in the bin. Obviously, we don't take anything out, but the following day we'll never put it back in it. We'll never bin it again. But being able to say like, the scones get made fresh every day for afternoon tea, but there's always leftover scones. What can we do with it? Cut them in half, cover them in butter, roast them in the oven, and do a huge quenelle of duck liver parfait made with the ducks that are in the that we have on the a la carte menu. Things like that. It's just like super bloody tasty that you can create. The croissants that we make with a baker who's 24 hours, we then cut them in half and we cover them in cod's roe. So instead of like a nice focaccia covered in cod's roe or a nice piece of bread, you've got these sweet croissants and the salty cod. It's just bloody delicious. And just utilizing things like that, making ragus or shepherd's pies with all of the trimmings from the cows that we have, mincing them down, cooking them for like 8 hours, so it's stunning, with whipped bone marrow from the bones that we get from the same cows. Little things like that was great. Making pasta using things that would normally go in the bin, but yet make lovely, stunning dishes with them. So to create something is the thing where I love, and so does the team. And when I made Ugly Butterfly, it was a whole other ballgame. You had to think extra. But in terms of sustainability in the group, how do you become sustainable? Do you utilize the whole vegetable? Do you utilize the whole animal? Do you do responsible sourcing? Yeah, sure, but that's not how you become sustainable. How you become sustainable is you teach. If you do not teach, you do not know. Perfect example is everyone would bin cauliflower leaves or broccoli stalks because their parents had. My mum had. I'd always bin them as well, not for a few years, but like before then, you know, utilizing stuff that you've always thrown away, but you've always had it in your mind that, yeah, you've always done it. So that's how it should be done. So creating things like a Caesar salad made with the broccoli stalks, where you thinly slice it on a mandolin instead of using cos lettuce, and then you mix it with Caesar dressing and all that sort of stuff, and the crunch and the water content is delicious. Utilizing things that you would always throw away in a more methodical, smarter way, but only doing it because you get taught it. So in Ugly Butterfly, I didn't have chefs; I only had students, because a chef would come in with a mind as I've always done it like this, so I'm continuing. Students, sponges, but ones that really care about sustainability and eating off the land, but eating everything, and then seeing their little cogs working, and then they then come to the drawing board with you and say, well, how you've done this, we can do this and we can do that. Growing our own mushrooms and all the ground coffee. So you have like a pillowcase finished with a coffee, hung in the wine cellar, and all of a sudden you got mushrooms growing. Well, you plant it with the spores, you got mushrooms growing on it. Okay, perfect. You got mushrooms on yesterday's bread. So all the bread that's freshly made, cut in half, olive oil in the oven, rubbed in garlic, roasted with loads of the mushrooms that you've just grown with the coffee. Things like that. So all of the packaging that we have in our group and everything from Haim is recycled or it's biodegradable. It's all that sort of stuff. And it's just thinking about the bigger picture. But you have to care about it.
Yeah. You do, yeah, and you make it sound so much more exciting than a lot of people, I suppose, who just go, "Oh yeah," and a little bolt on the side. We should probably give a shit about the environment. So that all sounds phenomenal, and I can see it as a release of your creativity. Do you think we have an obligation as a sector? Henry Dimbleby came out this week with his sort of looking at the food supply chain, and it's been sort of said that agriculture is probably one of the top 3 biggest impacts on the environment. Lots of people are changing to sort of, either flexitarian or more plant-based diet, looking at the impact of what we eat. Bearing in mind we're in food and drink, and we probably understand the supply chain and we understand food better than anybody else. Do you think that we sort of have a moral obligation to educate and help teach people about where food comes from, or do you think we should just sell what the customer wants to buy?
No, 100%. We have an obligation to do it. The ones that the ones that control food waste and the ones that control mass buying are the hospitality industry. So a thing where I always say, because the flexitarian, vegetarian, vegan that you just mentioned, I always say I hate that stuff. I think it's a load of bollocks, and I'll tell you why. My little humble opinion says that the meat industry produces 12 to 15% greenhouse gases. The cattle industry more than any transport industry. So more than planes, more than that, it's the cattle market. All their farts, which is hilarious, produces that much greenhouse gases. So don't cut down on eating meat. Start to eat meat sensibly. So I say that the retired dairy cows, retired dairy cows, they're usually between 7-8 years in the dairy industry, hooked up to a machine, getting totally destroyed and having a horrible life. But then after that, they just get put and they get given to dog food, or they get shipped away for shipped meat in foreign countries. We don't utilize that meat. You don't need to stop eating meat. You need to start eating better meat. So you can slow down the meat consumption for your own personal health, but eat better. So I work with people that buy retired dairy cows, and then they let them roam around for a year or two to actually start to enjoy life and be happy, because then the meat becomes more tasty. And we utilize that. So instead of having to go to one of their mass-produced cattle farms where are pumping them out when they're 550 kilos, we've got these much bigger beasts. They're like 900 to plus kilo animals that are absolutely perfect. They're tasty. They're full of marble because they're fat little monkeys, and they're absolutely delicious. So it's not about just needing to cut down eating beef. You've got to cut down eating mass-produced shit beef and start to change it to eating meat that would normally go thrown away in the bin. So it's the sustainability approach to zero waste. That's the thing I like to do. So I changed all my meat in Chelsea as retired dairy cows. I put it on the menu as retired dairy cows. No one ate it. I just took the word retired dairy cows off and put beef. Everyone eats it, but they enjoy it. It's got bags of flavor. It's stunning, stunning, stunning meat. And in terms of value cost to it, it's amazing. It's affordable because it would normally go in the bloody bin. And they're much larger cuts of meat as well. So ribeye is far bigger, fillet's far bigger, sirloin is, and all that sort of one. So it's really nice, big cuts. That's the sort of thing that people need to think a little bit more. And again, it's all about teaching. Ignorance is bliss. So everyone's saying, the meat market, we've got to cut down on eating it. I would say, yeah, cut down on eating that. Start eating the stuff that would normally get thrown away. And then cutting down on that automatically happens. It automatically happens because you're no longer buying the mass-produced sushi, the mass-produced, McDonald's sort of styled of stuff, and you're eating stuff that is going to be thrown away. It's a perfect, beautiful piece of meat covered in marbling. It's delicious. That's where people's minds should start to think.
Yeah, and in Europe, the ex-dairy cows are super popular. I remember when I looked into this before, and you might know the answer on this, or it might be a little bit too detailed, but post BSE, there was this sort of regulation that all cows had to be less than 3 years old, I think, and normally it's about 2.5 years in the meat industry, and therefore they weren't allowed to sell dairy into the meat industry because of potential sort of BSE. But I take it that regulations changed now. Did that come up when you were doing your research? Or?
I didn't know that part, that they weren't allowed to be more than 3 years old, but it definitely has changed, and yeah, now we can.
Yeah. Okay. And the other thing that comes up a lot is obviously around obesity, and the government are talking about putting calories on every menu dish to challenge obesity. What's your thoughts on that?
I think it's a load of rubbish. I really hope that doesn't come into it, because people go out to, restaurants like mine for an experience. They don't go out there for a side salad and to be made to feel like, oh man, I'm eating bad food. So that, I think, will cripple the more formal dining market.
Yeah, I always think it's a shame. I think we end up going this trajectory where all food almost has to be bloody, centrally produced in a factory, because that's the only place you can get accurate calorific information. Because as you were talking about then, if you're all of a sudden chucking in a little bit of cauliflower stalk or tweaking a dish, and proper chefs, for me, it should be about real food or shit processed food, and everybody should be encouraged to eat real food. And if you're eating real food and you're a real chef, you're going to tweak the recipe and tweak the dish, almost every time, depending on flavor. And having to hand it over to nutritionalists to do some analysis would probably kill the creative food sector, and we end up with going, look, we might as well give up and put everything in a bloody Ginster's pie wrapper.
No, 100%. And then you'll find that a lot of chefs, and the calorie counting to them dishes will be incorrect, because they are very much, okay, this didn't work, let's add a little bit more butter, or let's change this to this. And it just will not be accurate. So it'll be a complete waste of time, complete waste of money, and it'll just be off-putting to a diner who's coming in to have a tasting menu that's 18 courses and realize, well, that's actually like 4,000 calories. Well, you don't do it every day. It's a special occasion.
Yeah. So have you given any headspace, because you've got enough crap on your plate and you're thinking about enough stuff? But what do we do about the, I suppose, particularly sort of childhood obesity, and is it around education again? Have you given any thoughts?
Yeah, education, massively. So Adopt a School, a phenomenal program, getting kids to actually understand, one, numbers and English and science, between making things such as bread or salads or vegetables and stuff like that. Education at a young age gets people inspired. And I don't really think obesity should happen as a kid, because vegetables are the most colorful things ever. And kids love color. So when you start to educate parents as well as children into different colors and different textures, different flavors, you'll tend to see that they eat more. But I personally think if they want to calorie count restaurant menus, they should bloody ban processed food in general. That's the one that does you damage. Processed food makes you fat. Eating butter with a piece of beef doesn't, because it's natural. It's processed food that makes you fat, makes you feel sluggish, makes your mental state and your mind not as quick in progression and on the ball. Ban that. You'll soon see it stop.
Yeah. Am I right in saying that your mum was a bit of a trailblazer of this, and when you were a kid, she had a natural aversion to any kind of processed food and used to make everything fresh even then? Is that right?
Well, 100%. A proper housewife. She wasn't a chef, proper housewife, and she just cared about Owen in the kids' bodies. Plus, I had an intolerance to like sugar and dairy when I was younger, when I was a little boy. Not anymore, and therefore she didn't trust anything that came out the shops. You'd always smell bread, and you'd always smell like cakes, and you'd always smell like soup, roasts, or whatever. And it was just delicious, and everything was natural. No, there was no processed shit. I never had a hot dog. I never had a McDonald's. My mum was really quite strict. I wasn't allowed to eat any of that stuff. It was when I went to my grandparents, then I got it. But it's just like, yeah, she was very much what goes inside your kid's body is very, very bloody important.
What does your mum feel about your love of Kentucky Fried Chicken, Adam?
Yeah, she hates that. She's like, how can you eat that? That's bloody disgusting. It's the best thing ever. I love that.
We've all got a guilty pleasure. Okay, cool. Well, look, moving on to the future a little bit. So one of the other big things that was a trend in this sort of podcast, I suppose, well, trend in hospitality, basically, way before COVID happened, was this change, I suppose, this sort of venture capitalist investment in hospitality, and for me, something that in some ways was ripping the soul out of hospitality, because all of a sudden we started to get these rollouts of these casual dining brands, national brands, and a little bit formulaic and a little bit beige. And I just wonder what your opinion is as we go forward. Clearly, hospitality is, going to go through a real struggle. Do you think that it's going to be the casual dining sector by which I mean the sort of, the well-backed brands that survive this and get through it? Or do you think they're going to take a hit and actually it's going to create some space in the market to go back to more of the independent neighborhood restaurants? Have you given any thought to who comes out the other side of this?
Yeah, I think the capital investment restaurants are the ones that are going to get hit the most. They're the ones that, because they're not restaurateurs. They're business people that look at balance sheets and they look at forecasting, they look at P&Ls. And then they're the ones that are forecasting losses. Therefore, they'll just cut their loss and they will move their investments to, well, not them because they've lost their investments, but they'll put all their new investments into other markets, not being the hospitality one. So I feel like this virus it's been like a little culling session in hospitality, and it's getting rid of the soulless restaurants. Sadly, there's some phenomenal restaurants, like one of my favorite, for instance, hasn't made it, but that's unfortunate, and I feel for everyone who's lost a restaurant in this, not or any business for that matter. But I feel going forward, the consumers want to eat in a restaurant with personality, individuality, and I think chained restaurants where it's copy and paste with no real soul, just a purpose, is pretty much on the downward slide to collapse.
Do you think that's a good thing?
I think it's a good and a bad thing. Good for the hospitality industry to make sure that Britain stays the top of its game in terms of its individuality and what it's producing. Bad on one hand, that's people's money that they've lost, and that's jobs that are lost as well. But, it's the nature of the beast. Regardless if you're a two-star restaurant where there are two phenomenal that have lost it, or you're just a rollout chain of soulless food, it's unfortunate to lose something, but it needs to happen. There are far too many restaurants in London. I know that. I'm saying London because I know that market far more than anywhere else in the UK. And sadly, it needs it. It needs this. I lost 4 of it, so I can't speak. I needed to use them as well, so I can make my group better.
Yeah. No, you're. I think you're right, and I hope. I hope it's. And I share your concerns that everybody's got livelihoods, and it's a real shame for individual people. But yeah, I do feel it's why this is called the humans of hospitality and not the brands of hospitality. As I was getting fed up with these sort of formulaic rollouts, kind of affecting a sector that I feel so passionately about, and which has some incredibly, creative and energized human beings behind. And it was a shame to see it disappearing for the sake of a sort of a board of directors in London who didn't really understand hospitality. So whilst there's some sad sides, I really do hope that it's a little bit of a reset. You mentioned earlier about the sort of benefit of having outside tables and great for August. Again, you sort of predictions for the future, going into winter, all of a sudden you can't use the terraces so much. What's your thoughts on sort of how many restaurants, I suppose, are going to close? And do you think, are you optimistic about hospitality in the medium to long term, at least? What's the sort of time frame you're working on as to when restaurants can get back to profitability?
I think the end of September is when we'll see that a lot of restaurants haven't made it, and I think probably 20%. I'm saying 20% of hospitality in this country would have collapsed, which is a ridiculous amount. And I'm saying that by September because now all the furloughs are now changing. The winding up scheme, so a company can demand their bills to be paid and therefore can submit to the courts for your restaurant to be bankrupt, is now, as of 1st of August, opened up. And that right there is going to make a lot of restaurants close. And it's going to push them in that direction. So I think end of September, that's when we're going to see the big ones. But we're also going to see a lot more restaurants come on the market. And the way that landlords need to adapt is, instead of having big rents and big deposits, they're having percentages of turnovers. They're having capital investments from them. So therefore, they're saying, we'll do you a landlord's contribution of just say £100,000 or £200,000, but we want to buy the equipment. So then when you leave, the equipment stays here. That's the capital investment of the people of the buildings. I think is going to go. So we put proposals for another couple more restaurants based on that, and we've seen a good uptake from landlords to say, well, yeah, we're actually going to be changing a lot of our new portfolios to that route because we need these places filled. So it's new now. If you want to open a restaurant, someone that's really gasping to have their own one, now is the time to team up with someone who knows how to open restaurants, create a stunning business plan, create an idea, a menu concept and everything, and then find landlords, because they will then take percentage of turnover, for rent, rather than having to upfront put in, £500,000 to £1 million in a restaurant. Now you put in yourself and maybe 100 or 200,000, and you get them to pay the rest. So I think in that perspective, we'll see a lot more people being able to get their own restaurants, which is phenomenal to see. And then I'm thinking after December. So for the last quarter of this month, January this year, I think a lot of more restaurants will be then pumping it into profit. The first quarter of next year, I think, should be all good, ready for March's rents rateable value to get put back into place, and the VAT to go back up next year as well. So we need to save as much money over the next 9 months as possible before all these VATs start to go back up.
Yeah, I love the fact that despite the tears and the loss of your restaurants, and clearly the kind of emotional 3 or 4 months that you've had, that fundamentally you're still pumped and thinking now's the perfect time for somebody to open a restaurant. So yeah, you're mental, but hats off to you.
Yeah, I've been told that. But you have to make a good situation out of a bad crisis. You have to really try and be as positive as possible for your own sanity, not just the people around you, for your own sanity. And I think the future is as good as you want to make it. So you believe in yourself and you really think, I can do something, or I can, fulfill my dreams, do it. Don't let a bloody cold ruin your future.
That's why I like doing these podcasts, because this sector is full of equally bonkers and creative people. Adam, do you think you would you consider opening somewhere out of London?
I would probably not for another year or so, because I need to make sure that my group's fully stable before I start to branch out. I'll create another one in London, but that means I can still go to it every day. But yeah, of course, I would love to put one in Scotland. It's my home country. I think that would be absolutely phenomenal. But my group needs to be far more stable than what it currently is to be able to do that.
Do you think going forward then, with what you've now been through, do you think this will have a long-term impact on how you grow the business? Because you were growing at a significant rate of knots before. Do you think you're going to be more inclined to keep maybe a little bit more of a cash cushion in the business than you were before, or do you think you'll go as hard as you always did?
No, I'm learning from my own mistakes. I've made a lot of mistakes on the road, but it's the first time I've owned a restaurant group, so I'm about to. Well, it's obvious I will do. So yeah, the one thing I have noticed that I messed up the most is not having protection, not having a buffer of cash somewhere, so that if something did happen, we were there. We were living every month by month in the restaurant group. So one bad month, you're screwed. So yeah. Contingency plans and HAME. HAME and contingency plans, they're the two what I would really do moving forward. And don't open another restaurant until I can physically afford to have one fail.
Okay, good advice. So if Adam handling as is now went back and spoke to Adam handling 5 years ago, is there a key nugget of advice you would give yourself back then, knowing what you've been through?
100%, but I know me back then would just tell me to fuck off.
Yeah, that's a good answer. I think you're absolutely right. Well, look, I'm conscious of time and your exceptionally busy schedule, but yeah, really, I love watching your adventures, and like I say, I've seen you talk, and I just, hats off to the amount of energy and the amount of drive you've got. And I don't think you can teach people to be a driven sort of inspirational entrepreneur, but I can see why you achieved so much so young. If people want to follow your adventures and your restaurants, is there a particular sort of social media channel or website? Where should people go to follow you, Adam?
Yeah, check me out about all social medias. Instagram, Adam Handling is there. Check me out there. You see the timeline of me doing stupid shit every day. But yeah, my storyline is a little bit more professional with all my restaurants and everything.
Okay, perfect. Well, I'll put some links up in the show notes that go with this episode as well on the website. So, just once again, thanks for sparing the time. I'm glad we managed to reschedule so quickly, and I've enjoyed chatting to you. Thanks, Adam. Good luck in the future.
No, thank you for having me. Thank you. Bye-bye.
So there you have it. Anybody else exhausted having listened to Adam's crazy journey? As I said, he is a busy man, but hats off to him for all he's achieved. So why not go and help Adam out? Maybe order one of his Haim dishes for delivery to your house and make some of Adam Handling's food at home. Head over to the website humansofhospitality.co.uk and I will put some links to the social media and to his website on there as we discussed. And remember, if you can, go back to the beginning, listen to what I said there, leave a review for the podcast. It really, really does help me out and I get better guests for you to listen to. So we're all a winner. Okay, I'll be back in a week with another guest. Cheers.